Hi, I'm John Paul Caponegro. Welcome to my DVD series, Revolution. Let's talk a little bit about test files. For test files, you really want a wide variety of colors and tones. You want to span the gamut, so to speak. Second, it's also really useful to have photographic information, the kind that's captured with cameras, and synthetic information, the kind that's rendered in Photoshop. Pure patches of specific values that will help you identify specific characteristics of your output conditions. Let me show you a little bit about that. A test file like this incorporates both. And one of the things that you will find is that if you can reproduce these synthetic patches that are neutral, they're numerically neutral, equal values in RGB. If those can be reproduced as neutral, the proper color balance will also be achieved throughout the rest of the color images. Very often these very saturated fields of color can hide any small inaccuracies, but improving this neutral information will also improve the saturated color values. One of the key things that you want to watch for is throughout the tonal scale it should be consistently toned. Even if these patches are off just say a few points red, if they're all off equally a few points red, that's easy to cure. But if, on the other hand, the shadows are coming in too red and the highlights, say, coming in too cyan, or there's a color cross throughout that, that color cross will not only contaminate the rest of the color information and may not be as visible, but it's also very hard to address in Photoshop. If it were uniformly red, you could simply add cyan overall to compensate for that. But compensating for a poor gray balance, this color cross, is very difficult, and it's much better to go back upstream and improve your color management, possibly by using a better profile. So it helps to identify how to address the color issues once you've printed them out. Supersaturated, pure values of red, green, and blue, cyan, magenta, and yellow can often identify just how saturated a field of color you'll be able to print out on a specific substrate. It can also be useful to run those pure values down to black and also up to white. More colors throughout the spectrum will also indicate just how saturated a field of color you can hold. These are, say, of maximum saturation driven to the absolute purest values you can achieve in a particular color space and then rendered down to the output space. And that can be helpful to see just how much, say, your reds fall down on a matte paper. You can also come in for these neutral patches at a more specific or kind of granular level. And one of the things that can be very useful is to come in at these deep values in the shadows and very, very bright values in the highlights. We're identifying what they call minimum printable dots. And what we're looking for is separation in the highlights. At what percentage dot do you actually hold some detail? You can look at these are all grayscale values rendered out on a scale of 1 to 100. So a 1% dot, you might hold a tiny bit of separation. And it's absolutely amazing that today with these technologies, we can actually hold separation between 0 and 1%. It used to be much, much higher, but now with the new drivers, ink sets, profiles, and the ability to customize ink limit, we can actually hold a little separation there. It gets more challenging down in the shadow areas. Typically, in the early days, we were very hard pressed to hold any separation beyond 90%, which meant if we were going to have printable values, most of the values in our files needed to be below that. This continues to increase, getting higher and higher. With current ink sets, we're really being able to hold a separation between 95, 96, sometimes between 97. And with some of the newer printers, say the 11880 recently came out, and we're holding separation down in the 97, even in the 98 range. Maybe one day we'll have drivers, profiles, ink sets, and precisely set ink limits so that we can hold separation even down between 100 and 99%. But it does help you identify values inside your file that won't print. If you have a value darker than a certain amount, it simply won't hold any detail. Doing this kind of testing can be really helpful to identify the particular print characteristics or conditions that you're dealing with. It can also help you identify how to address them. If a profile has bad gray balance, get another profile. If you say that you're blocking up your shadows, you can adjust the amount of ink that's going down so that opens up that shadow detail. You can actually adjust that somewhat on the printer driver rather than having to go back in there. You can also adjust the data in your file to optimize it further once you know the maximum, or say the limits of the printing condition that you found. Doing this kind of testing up front will really help a great deal rather than trying to adjust images individually, one at a time, to compensate for these small inaccuracies. And doing this stuff up front will make your life a lot easier and improve the quality of your printing.